If you're chilling in the city thinking what to do, Philly Phans Podcast is for you. Every week in Philly there's something new, and Kev, Key, and Eric know what to do. If you're riding in the city thinking what to do, Philly Phans Podcast is for you. Brian with the in-depth Sixers review, and we can't forget about Carson too.
Ladies and gentlemen, another week in paradise, another new week in Philadelphia sports. Welcome to the Philly Phans Podcast. This is Kevin.
And Eric.
And if you are new to the YouTube page, you are seeing a new face, kind of, on the Zoom chat right now. We have a big guest today, Football Kelly via Twitter. Kelly, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So obviously we have some big news. The reason why Football Kelly is on the show is because we had a big Eagles breaking news segment the other day. The Eagles signed their head coach. Did they officially sign him and announce him yet?
No.
I was going to say, I haven't heard anything about the Eagles officially announcing it. It's all been just kind of rumors right now. It's not really like the Eagles have announced anything.
When Adam
Schefter's really wrong.
says it, people,
All right.
but it sounds like most people are saying that it's a done deal, just contract and whatnot has to be signed.
So the Eagles have not officially signed Nick Sirianni as their head coach, the offensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, Frank Reich territory. Kelly's here to break it down, help us out a little bit more, get some more understanding of this signing and what it means for the Eagles in the future, especially after, 20 hours of interviewing Josh McDaniels on Sunday?
That poor man.
Yeah, I mean, I think it came out of left field for a lot of fans that he was the pick because we all heard that Josh McDaniels was such a serious contender for the job, and a lot of fans had negative feelings about that particular person to come in and fix Carson Wentz, as everybody always says when talking about this position. So Nick Sirianni has no head coaching experience. He's been a coach for 16 years, 11 in the NFL, worked his way up from a quality control position at the Kansas City Chiefs, was a wide receiver coach, was a quarterback coach, and then became the OC in Indy when Reich went there in 2000 after 2016. So he's kind of an unknown. A lot of people don't know much about him. I had to look up a lot of the information I just said because I really had no awareness of who he was and what he was about. Mm-hmm. But I think it was important for the team to hire an offensive-minded coach. I thought defensive guys would be nice if we got, a stud for play calling at the offensive coordinator position, but getting somebody in here who is the head coach to really speak to this offense and get them back on track was really something that I was hoping to see Lori do with the decision-making on this head coaching search.
Yeah, and from all of my understanding, a lot of the players wanted Deuce Staley mainly because they knew Deuce Staley, but right now, just like we've been saying on the podcast, we don't know what Deuce Staley would bring to the table. Deuce Staley's been a prominent figure in the Eagles organization, but more as the running back coach. The Eagles have not trusted him with that offensive coordinator position at this point. Through last year, they decided not to even have an offensive coordinator position because they are smarter than everyone else. So once again,
that worked out great.
Yeah,
so great.
They're just like Joel Embiid.
Guess I'm just smarter than everybody else.
That's Howie Roseman every week. By the way,
you love your sound bites. Well, how do you?
There's so many more.
Looking up as Kelly did some information about him. It looks like he spent most of his time when he got into, let's say, the quarterback coach role or the offensive coordinator role with Philip Rivers, because he was with San Diego. Why? Philip Rivers is the strangest throwing quarterback I've ever seen in my life. He just looks like he's like, But I mean, he's still a good quarterback, and I guess is the connection with him being under Frank Reich for a year to be the help for Carson, as they're saying he should be. do they really think that a guy's going to come in and fix the psyche of a quarterback? Because that's basically where we are with Carson. It's not that he doesn't have the talent.
Yeah, when Sirianni was with the Chargers, Frank was the QB coach, and Sirianni was the offensive quality control coach there in 2013, early on in his career. Frank moved up to the OC position the following 2 years, and Sirianni became the quarterback coach there.
Right.
So they do have past history that really propelled Frank to know that he was his guy for the OC position when he became a head coach in Indy. So the fact that Frank has such a confidence that he was really going to improve what he was trying to do, he was going to help him with his game planning from his experiences working beside him. I think that is something that Eagles fans will feel good about, because I think a lot of fans thought Reich was really a mastermind of the 2017 offense. So if you bring in somebody who Frank really trusted and game planned with Reich for several years in his career, that's a nice fit, and that's probably what Lurie is thinking as well.
Right, and I agree with that, and I'm always going to give a new coach a chance. I'm not going to say anything about that because I don't know him as a coach. No one knows him as a head coach, so you might as well give him a chance. I mean, he's if he's going to be here, and he has some trust with Frank, and he has some trust obviously with the Eagles' top front office. So I mean, you got to give him a chance, right, Kev?
Definitely have to give him a chance. I mean, I reached out to a few people that I know that I've worked with Sirianni, or
your insiders that you never tell me about.
Worked in the Philadelphia Eagles organization.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I did talk to a few people, and basically they told me what I kind of already knew. One, I talked to someone who worked with him in Kansas City. If you listen to the podcast, it's no surprise of who I am talking about in this situation. Sirianni was a young coach when this person played in Kansas City at the time. So he was just getting his feet under him. He's learned under some good coaches, which helps. But if you look at the Jeffrey Lurie move, this is a very much like a Jeffrey Lurie move. This doesn't look like Howie Roseman made any decision in it. From what I heard throughout the week, it sounds like Howie wanted McDaniels, which is why he had him in the interview for so long on Sunday. From everything I've seen and everything I've heard, what they want to do is they want to prove that they are right about Carson Wentz. And this is the information that I kind of knew, but was also given. They want to feel as if they are absolutely right about Wentz. And the best way to do that is to bring in guys they kind of trust. They trusted Andy Reid, and they thought Doug Peterson was going to be an Andy Reid guy, and he was going to be the next coming of Andy Reid. And they kind of were a little bit wrong about that. But once again, he was a yes man. So he did what the organization wanted. Now they're bringing in Sirianni. I have to play the Italian Baba da Boopy while I'm talking about Sirianni. So they brought in Sirianni, who is a Frank Reich guy. And they are going to think that Frank Reich is going to be basically taking over this team, kind of like they thought Andy Reid would be with the Doug Peterson move. So it's very similar, very parallel to what they want, but I really don't think that this guy is going to challenge the organization. And the one thing we need is someone who challenges the organization.
Well, you don't know that either.
I think you're definitely right about being concerned, but you have to give him a chance to step in the building and see how he responds to the task at hand. I think that was the problem for Peterson. He wanted to be able to make some decisions, and they were like, no. And they kicked him out for not going with them on their decision making. But he was making some decisions like trusting people like Press Taylor, and it was an odd situation to really, you have to know who is a talented person. So my real interest in this decision is who's the offensive coordinator, who is he bringing in as the defensive coordinator? Is he going to have a say in his own staff? Those are the key things that I think we have to look for. in determining whether or not he really gets to be a decision maker at the head coach position.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I hope he does get to pick his own staff and to all honesty, because then you really are giving him, the reins and the trust if you're bringing him in. I mean, you got to give him people he wants to work with. And I know there's some people out there, a lot of people out there, like, well, Deuce should be the obvious offensive coordinator, but I don't know if he even wants to be in Philly anymore after this whole thing that went down. So I know he has some offers to be offense coordinator at other teams. I don't remember which teams they were. I just saw him on Twitter, so I'm not quite sure. But I do hope they let him kind of dictate who he does put as OC and the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that I am looking forward to with the new head coach, regardless of all the other stuff, is really utilizing the skills positions properly. I saw like so many people being misused in our offense last year. It just seemed like there was no understanding of the wide receiver position and how to place them to give them an advantage on the field. And that caused Carson to make some poor decisions, forcing the ball places he didn't need to force it. So hopefully this guy coming in with a wide receiver experience as a college level player, Division III, I think he played in college, was a wide receiver himself in college, wide receiver coach for many years. He's going to come in with that experience, that understanding of how to utilize some of the younger guys on this team, because as everybody always talks about, the cap situation is going to be terrible. So we really got to develop our players, the young guys that are on the team already. And, Peterson didn't have a great track record of developing guys. I think the 1 year we saw a really substantial core of wide receivers was when Mike Groh was the wide receiver coach. So getting key guys in the wide receiver coach position, quarterback coach, obviously, those are people that we need to be highly critical of when it comes to hiring. And I'm hoping that, this change of coaching staff is able to make that happen.
Yeah, maybe it will. Maybe they'll jump on the Sixers and the Flyers bandwagon and start to develop these players they already have.
Right.
And use the youth and actually have them doing well at their position. I'd be excited to see that, because we always see these draft picks that have done nothing and then leave and then have a pretty good career. We even saw it this year. So, I mean, I'd like to see that, and that'd be awesome. So I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. I just think that'd be awesome.
Well, and then the other thing you see out of like the Frank Reich offensive in Indianapolis is the use of the running back game and the tight end game,
right.
Which is really important to the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, we may never see Zach Ertz again, but if we're going to develop Dallas Goedert and we're going to develop Richard Rodgers into these players, or maybe even draft another tight end, and we'll get to the draft show much later on in this podcast. About that right now. We are not talking about the NFL draft yet, but you could see him develop these tight ends and this running game a little bit more than Doug Peterson did, while looking to build up guys like Jalen Reagor, maybe actually do something with Eric's favorite wide receiver, Jay Jaw. And
I thought he was going to have a great year this year. I'm sorry.
Somehow, watch.
See, I have another one who agrees with me.
Yeah, the victor of the Philly.
You give him the contested ball, like you've always said in the draft, like when he was coming out, contested ball catcher. Okay, well, we've never used him that way half the time. I know he had some drops, but he was a rookie, so give him a break. But yeah, like develop the guys that you brought in. Otherwise, why are they on the roster?
So refreshing to hear that, Kev.
Is that a shot at Deshaun and Alshon as well?
No, well, you should use.
It's not a shot.
Like I said,
like our front office had a tendency of paying these older guys when they brought in their replacement like a year or so ago, and they still aren't seeing the field yet. So, like, okay. We're an old, expensive roster now. Thanks so much for not doing anything with the young guys.
Right.
So what are we going to do with them now that we're top 6 pick in the draft?
But she does have a point, Kev. JJ was brought in to be like an Alshon and go up for those contested balls, and they haven't used Alshon like that, let alone JJ at the right side. So that's why a lot of people have that fear going into the draft of whoever we draft, we're going to bring them here, and then they're going to regress, because that's the issue. What's going on, and you kind of saw the young guys achieve more at the middle or the linebacker position this year, and that's the cheapest we've spent on linebackers, I don't know, in a long time. What did you say, $3 million, right, Kev?
Well, everyone but Nate Gary, yes.
He can go.
Nate Gary can please just leave.
Yeah. Poor guy.
Oh my God.
But
I always said I just don't think he's a starting linebacker, so it was like setting him up to fail.
that's exactly what it was. And one of the things that we're noticing is that the Eagles seem to have retained their offensive line coach and retained their special teams coach, which would be huge for them. But Kelly and Eric, you make great points when it comes to offensive defensive coordinator position. This is we didn't hire a defensive coordinator before we hired a head coach this year, which is definitely a good sign. So maybe Sirianni has
he's bringing in Byron Leftwich from Tampa to be the OC. He's just making a lateral move. It's fine.
That doesn't make sense, but sure.
It's lateral. It's fine. It'll be all right.
So Eric has been on the Byron Leftwich bandwagon.
Yeah, no, he wants to make the team better. So he's like, I did my time in Tampa. I'm going to come to Philly now. I just want him as a coach. I like him.
Byron Leftwich bandwagon.
I love him as a coach. Whatever.
Sirianni might not do that for you. He might not do it for you.
No, I'll give any head coach. I said when Peterson came, I'm going to give him a chance. And he won his Super Bowl. Right? And then he kind of regressed. It happens. It's life of being a head coach.
What we need someone that's between the Chip Kelly and between the Doug Peterson as a coach. As a fan, that's what we need. We need someone who's
Chip Kelly when he first came here.
Well, exactly, because he called out Howie on his crap. So we want a coach that's going to be able to call out ownership on their crap and management on their crap, but at the same time still be able to
Doug
work
was
with
way
them.
Too nice.
Yeah, Doug was too much of a buddy. Where if you see this guy on a football field, Clark, I can't think of his name right at the top of my head. NBC's
John Clark.
John Clark, thank you. Pointed out his camera work where he's hard on these guys and he's pushing these guys to their limits, but he's still going to be friendly with them. So hopefully he's going to take that attitude and bring it into even the management position. Say, hey, this is who you want to start. No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
This is my game plan.
Are you happy that they didn't go with a Bill Belichick disciple or
I'll let Kelly answer it first because I think everybody knows my thoughts on that.
I had a serious problem with the way he handled things with the Colts. I know that people think that that's old news, but that speaks to character.
I agree.
If you make an agreement to be the head coach and you back out because you got cold feet or something, I just think that maybe it wasn't the right time for you. But ultimately, around the league, he hasn't been getting head coaching calls since that moment.
Right.
Because it speaks to your character. Are you going to back out on us? We can't trust you, essentially. And he may have been a great fit for creating an offense that would work for Wentz. We know that the Patriots have never really had a crazy talented wide receiver core. And yes, they had Brady, but they were successful in getting guys open and whatever. So he could have been a good pick. I thought that it would have been a negative to bring him in because we have seen Bill Belichick disciples fall on their face.
Mm-hmm.
And many others have not succeeded after leaving Belichick. So it's one, his career in Denver was so long ago. I'm not going to hold that against him. He definitely probably will get an opportunity to be a head coach in the future. I just don't know if I would have wanted him in Philly.
No, I agree. I don't think a lot of people want him for that exact reason, what he did to the Colts last year. And that's what what's his name on Mike Missinelli?
Tyrone.
Yeah, he was talking about it one day, and he was agreeing with Kelly. He said his character, you don't want to bring someone in that has that character trait, because that doesn't go away. Because he, as he put it, he is stone now because of his age. He said when you're a child, you're like Play-Doh, and then you become clay, and then you become stone. So he's saying his character now has that trait in it. Yeah, it is what it's not going to change. You're not going to grow. And partially, I disagree with that because I think anyone can grow, but I understand what he's saying, and I understand why a lot of teams wouldn't want to take a second look at him. And I was surprised that he was a candidate for the Eagles.
I was too. I was very surprised. And then as it was getting more serious with him, I was like, oh boy, am I going to have to start talking myself into this man?
I actually was not surprised. I was not surprised simply because I know Jeffrey Lurie loves Andy Reid, and I know Jeffrey Lurie is obsessed with the New England Patriots. These are things I know for a fact. However, if you look at the Bill Belichick coaching tree, it is literally trash.
No, who's the only good one? Vrabel?
Was he really?
Vrabel was just fired.
A player.
No, Patricia was just fired.
Sorry.
So is with the Titans, but wasn't he just a player for him? He didn't.
I guess that's true.
Yeah, you're right. So he has Nick Saban, Eric Mangini, Josh McDaniels, Al Groh, Romeo Crennel, Jim Schwartz, Bill O'Brien, all guys who have failed as head coaches, basically.
Bill O'Brien.
All guys who have failed as head coaches.
That man. I would love to do a podcast just on Bill O'Brien.
You can do that one solo.
I might.
I'm free. I'm not available that
day. You won't be available that day?
I wouldn't. No. It was just basically to make fun of him. But no, you're right. And it's a shame. But I'm glad we went the way we went, to be honest with you, Kev. Because I thought you would be more excited too because of the Frank Reich connection.
Well, I'm more excited, but it also leaves the questions. Obviously, the Eagles want to be right about the Carson Wentz move. Yeah. And here's the thing, though, Eric. You just named it. He's now a rock, right? As a challenger Play-Doh. So
I said he's stone.
Stone. Sorry. So he is stone now. So is Carson Wentz going to change his mentality? Is he going to change as a player?
Yes. Everyone can still grow, Kev. I was just explaining an analogy that I heard.
I wanted that analogy. It was a good analogy. So
it's a good analogy.
It is.
We want a guy who's going to be able to break that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Carson Wentz has all these articles coming out about his character and all these crazy stories about how he's not a good teammate. They've recirculated over the course of time. So maybe the first time I didn't believe it, and I was very negative towards the reporter who was saying all of the stuff because
Jeff McClain,
a hit report. But if you have 3 or 4 different reports from different sources coming out and saying the same type of thing, eventually you have to start believing that maybe we have a Carson Wentz problem, his attitude potentially.
Right. It's more like where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah. If you get a guy in here and says to him, in 2020, you were 24th out of 35 in qualified passers in completion percentage, which is terrible. And, he was at the bottom of the league as a quarterback last year. Humble yourself. Become a part of this team and stop thinking you're better than people. If all of the reports are true, you are causing some of this problem. There's not a person who can say that it didn't seem like there wasn't chemistry with Hurts when he was on the field. Guys played for him, and I don't think that they played harder for him, so I'm not going to go like that. But it did seem like he was on the same page as his guys a lot of times, and Wentz was forcing things and not seeing the field well and not, being the caliber quarterback we need that we're paying for. So he needs to humble himself this offseason, and if he wants a chance to really be traded somewhere else potentially in future years, he's got to play better. Right. Nobody's going to want to trade for an expensive, bad quarterback. So it's here or nowhere at this point for Wentz. He needs to commit to getting better on the field, The scheme will help him. The offensive line being healthier will help him. So much will go into helping him. But he, as a person, needs to step back and see that there has been a lot of criticism of his character off the field, and he needs to try to correct that and rectify that with some of the guys on this roster.
Brian, we've talked about that on the podcast. And once those stories came out, we always went to, well, look at his body language, the sideline, look at how he's handling himself in games.
Yeah.
And we always thought that he did look humble and that he did show that he was helping Hurts and he was cheering him on. So we always thought these reports were false. But again, in his head, he might be like, well, the cameras are on me, so we don't know what goes on behind closed doors.
Right.
But in the eye of things, it looks like he is this humbled quarterback who kind of like, yeah, I kind of sucked this year, so I'm sitting the bench. So who knows what the actual story is?
I totally agree with you. I'm not trying to be hard on him, but, there is a point in time when there's more than one report coming out on the same issues that, where there's smoke, there is fire.
Right.
Well, and I agree with you. One thing I'm seeing with Wentz, though, is that you get the other side of the story. You get those veterans like Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey. All those guys are sticking up for him, but then it's the other side. So if you're looking at the younger rookie class, those guys have been in the league for a couple of years. That's where you're seeing the smoke a little bit more. And it does come a little bit from Alshon Jeffrey. And we know that Alshon Jeffrey's been the name that has created this smoke in the past. It's connecting and making those connections with these guys. And that's going to be Sirianni's first critical thing to do, is create this team bonding atmosphere with this organization. And hopefully, when COVID seems to go away a little bit more and when these players can get together a little bit more, Sirianni can start building this character with the team, because they need to be connected with one another.
And it's the kind of thing where I think under Peterson, he was too nice to everybody. But the thing is that the older guys on the roster who may be very supportive of Wentz, the cap situation is going to cut a lot of potential veterans from this team, and he's going to be with the younger guys. So it's upon him now. It's incumbent upon him to address the younger guys and say, this is our team. And, maybe I've handled myself the wrong way and given people the wrong impression of me. But the fact is that if it's a younger roster and he's one of the guys on the team, Sirianni needs to create an identity for the offense, and they need to all be on board with that identity, because under Peterson, there was no identity. It kind of seemed like we were out of sorts with what we were going to get when they went on the field each and every week. So I'm willing to give Wentz all of the credit and, criticize him when there are things that go wrong. Some people are only pro and only negative. I try to be, balanced in my critique of him, but he is the guy and he needs to act like it, and hopefully that will turn this team around completely. I mean, we are at the bottom of the league right now, but if Carson Wentz rehabilitates himself and starts playing like the guy we know he can be, we're going to be a great team again, and pretty quickly.
I've also tried to stay balanced, but it ends up being that I'm a Wentz apologist. So
you
yeah,
are.
well,
you are.
I've had it both ways. I'm apparently an apologist, and I'm too critical of him. So no, it doesn't.
Yeah, we seem to be split on this podcast, even though I'm falling more towards your side, Kev, in the past few weeks. I just feel like we need to go that route. I mean, we're paying so much money for him. If you're going to do anything, you might as well turn him around. I mean, I'm sure he sees a sports psychologist. If he doesn't, he definitely should. But I think there's just too much money in hand to where he needs to, at least next year, be given the opportunity to turn it around. So I'm glad they picked a guy who is going to handle that, rather than just say, well, we're going to go with Hurts. So, but then again, what do you do with Hurts now? I don't know. Is he still your backup? Sure, why not?
Speaking about the guy they just hired,
Cozy,
your boy Mike Lombardi said
great.
he said today that the Eagles made a mistake hiring Nick Sirianni, which of course naturally means we're winning the Super Bowl. So get excited!
In 2 years.
Here we go,
I'm
2
ready.
more years.
What did he say that about Doug?
It was just reported again that they made a mistake hiring him via Mike.
I mean, it is very much along the same lines of a hire. Like when you look at the parallels, like Peterson and Sirianni, they didn't have that much experience as the other candidates potentially to like really be a top pick but we literally went into the head coaching search like after everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there is this youth movement happening with the head coaching hires where the new move is to hire your McVay or LaFleur and all these guys who are young, up-and-coming offensive minds and give them, experience at the OC and other coaching positions. Like that's the move at this point. So
Right.
I understand that you can be critical of the decision if you think like he doesn't have enough experience to be the guy, but you also don't know if he's capable of being the guy because you haven't seen anything yet.
Right, and I agree with that. And you're exactly right. Is there's this youth movement, and it just happens in the NFL where if something works, then the copycats come out, and that's what you're seeing right now. And it's funny because Sirianni's still young or still older than McVay. I think McVay is only 33.
Yeah.
But it's these younger guys that have this influence and these new ideas coming onto the field because the game's changed so much. So they bring their new ideas and they actually work because we're not in that old, 3 yards in a cloud of dust football anymore. So
and maybe we'll run the ball more.
Maybe we will. Miles Sanders, led the league in yards per carry with his lack of touches, and they loved Jonathan Taylor, and they used Naheem Hines well. So I'm excited. That's the one thing I'm actually most excited about to see him because I'd like to see these running backs.
Pittman, you saw who was the other wide receiver, pretty young? Mooney, I think his name was. Like these guys on the Colts were just making plays, and you're just like, we want that. Like we want our young guys to be making plays because we're at the point in our roster situation that's basically our only option at this point.
Right, and you want to be like, and that's where I see maybe Lori's like, I want to be like the Patriots because they brought in any receiver, and it was like they were the next greatest thing. It's almost the same thing in Green Bay. You don't see these. I mean, you have Aaron Rodgers, but still, there's receivers are getting open, they're making plays, and they're no names until they make their name. So I'd love to see that.
I can't wait to see Miles Sanders actually used right.
Oh my gosh!
So
we still.
Great.
Here's hoping.
I want Kelly's take on this because we've been talking about this forever, Kev. Do you think we still need that north-south power back?
Yes.
Because we've been like, every time one comes available, like when Hyde was available, when Fournette was available, like,
we've been
hey guys,
LeGarrette Blount in our backfield or a LeGarrette Blount-esque running back in our backfield ever since he left.
Right.
Kelly, don't say that because now that's all Howie's gonna sign is the LeGarrette Blount guys, like Deshaun Jackson. We all wanted Deshaun Jackson guys. He brought back Deshaun Jackson. You can't say Blount's gonna come out of retirement.
He has tried to regurgitate his own philosophy in 2017 every single year with Mike Wallace coming in as the speed guy for Torrey Smith, and then trying to bring in other running backs to replace LeGarrette Blount, and re-signing Ajayi when you basically knew that he was going to be the guy.
Or re-signing Howard.
Yeah, didn't resign Howard, which maybe that was the right decision. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
The problem is when you have short yardage that you need to get, and quarterback sneak isn't the best option, because I think overall that's like our best move when Carson Wentz is in the game. Quarterback sneak if you have short yardage, but if it's like 3 yards or 4 yards, that's where you need that power running back, and we have not had that Miles Sanders is probably the closest thing to a full, like, capable running back. I think the world of him. I would give him the ball as much as possible in the backfield, receiving. I would give him the ball any chance you can because he's just a threat in every aspect. But when it comes to short yardage like that on 3rd down or 4th down, potentially just to steal a game, we don't have that.
Not right now. Absolutely not.
I think you can get that in the draft. I think you can get a young guy in here to be that guy. You don't necessarily need to sign somebody in free agency to be that person, but it's definitely a missing part of our roster. We have a ton of holes on our roster, but that's one that has not been filled since LeGarrette Blount left.
Right. Yeah, they've been trying. It almost seems like they've been trying to fill the Sproles, hole of that receiving running back, but Miles Sanders can be that. So you don't really need that. So, yeah, I agree.
No, they've definitely been trying to do that. I mean, that's the reason why Boston Scott's still in the backfield for the Eagles. That's why Miles Sanders, they try to roll out a little bit more for those screen passes.
Well, he can do that, though.
He can do that, but he also needs the time to take that little bit of a break with that guy who runs in between the tackles, like we've been saying since March? Since the draft, we've been saying this, by the way. Since the draft, we've said they need a guy that can run between the tackles. And they're trying to reinvent the wheel because Howie is smarter than everybody else.
Still can't believe he's around.
Yeah, he's the guy that I thought was the most responsible for what has transpired over time. I didn't think that it was out of question to fire Doug, but I definitely thought that Howie was more responsible for the issues that have incurred over the last few years. Our history of injuries is just not like a normal situation. I know that there's been an increase in injuries across the league, but it seems like our team is always at the top of the list. Like, why are guys getting surgery like 10 weeks after the fact? Like, what is happening with our medical staff that they are so poorly managed? That all goes through Howie Roseman. So it just seems like a waste of time to let him make decisions like the draft coming up, especially when you have the 6th pick in the draft. I'm terrified that he's going to botch this.
We've been saying that for weeks.
We've been saying that as well. Howie Roseman is someone who, in my opinion, at this point, this hire is going to get rid of Howie Roseman in one way or another. If the hire doesn't work out, Howie Roseman's going to be gone. If the hire does work out, that means Sirianni is going to have more options as player development and be able to pick his players, which means Howie is gone. So we have a good chance of Howie going away within the next year or two, depending on how this move works out for the Philadelphia Eagles. Kelly, obviously, it was an honor to have you on the podcast this week.
Thank you for
Obviously,
having me.
We want to give you a few shout-outs, so make sure you follow Football Kelly on Twitter. Where else can they find you, Kelly? And you might have to give the Football Kelly tag on the
I'll put it on the YouTube video when we get on there.
Yeah, I have my own podcast, and I am, always talking about the Eagles on Twitter. So you can follow me at football_Kelly, and my podcast is on the Eagles Brawl Podcast. So the Kelly Green Show on Eagles Brawl, and Twitter usually is the best way to find me.
Yeah, and we saw you had some great guests on Eagles Brawl. Merrill Reese recently. You had Jennifer Slay, who everybody loves. How is she on? Because
she seems like an awesome person.
She's so gracious. Like, I pretty much would say that about all of the guests that came onto my show. Just like completely gracious with their time. Jennifer Slay was actually the first ever guest on my show.
That's awesome.
Any knowledge of what my questions would be like, and just like agreed immediately. So a lot of respect for her. She was so open, and the fact that it's been a pandemic and they're new to this city, it was great to get a sense of how her life has changed since coming from Detroit to Philadelphia, and getting her insights on how a difficult season has been on her husband, and her perspective on things was really fascinating to hear. So that's what I'm trying to do with the show, bring different perspectives, talk about the team with different people who have interesting outlooks on what's going on. Colleen Wolfe is from Philadelphia, so spoke to her on one of my episodes. And even though the Eagles were pretty terrible this year, there's a lot to talk about clearly with them. Some teams are just bad and not worth talking about, but it just seems like Eagles fans care regardless of good years, bad years. We're always going to be trying to figure out a way to make this team be better or challenge the front office. And that's the glory of being an Eagles fan. We're always about talking the birds.
Yep, super supportive. Doesn't matter what's going on.
Absolutely.
Well, and the beauty of it, we'll always find something to complain about.
Absolutely.
It's always something
Always.
new every week.
Yeah.
Well, Kelly, thank you for coming on. You can follow her at the Eagles Brawl on anywhere you can find podcasts. It's the Kelly Green Show, and it might actually be the best show on that entire Brawl network.
Gio is definitely the star.
Oh, sorry. Gio is number one. I apologize. Giovanni.
Yeah, then me.
If you're listening, I apologize.
He's gonna come. He's gonna come at you on Twitter, Kev.
He might. I don't want
He's
Giovanni to come after me because we both like Carson Wentz a lot.
Yeah, he's the man.
He might like Carson Wentz a little bit more than I do. So,
Loyal.
well, Kelly, thanks for joining us. That's Football Kelly, _Kelly on the Twitter machine. Give her a follow. As always, it's a privilege, Kel.
See you guys.
Bye. So, Kev, that was awesome and nice to have a welcomed guest that could speak about football and that wasn't us.
Yeah, definitely a welcome guest. Talk about football, talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. But Eric, I guess we got to transition, right?
Well,
you want to talk more Eagles?
No, we're gonna. You know what, Kev? I think this episode was so great. We're gonna wrap it up here, and we're gonna have a part 2 to talk about the Sixers and the Flyers.
Oh, part 2. So we'll wrap up the Kelly Green portion of the Philly Fans podcast here. Does that mean I give exit music too?
Yeah.
Oh man, I gotta get the.
I know it was a random thought, but I think it's gonna work. And it went a little long. We don't want to drag out the rest of the podcast because there was so much information in that first part that I'd like to have two. Just good thoughts, and I appreciate it. I appreciate any guest we have on. So,
all right. So part 1, follow at @football_Kelly on the Twitter machine. Follow at the Philly Fans. That's PHANS on the Twitter machine, on the Instagram machine. Facebook is at the Philly Fans podcast. Part 1 logging off. This is Kevin
and Eric.
And I guess we're going to be back for part 2 shortly.
You'll see us shortly.
Got to get the music ready. I'm sorry. I had it. There it is.
I still play